I have this message, and I just, it's Palm Sunday, and so, yeah, we probably should have some palms behind me. I guess there's a little palm behind me. That counts. But I have this message today that I just believe is perfect for what most of us are experiencing. And you might be thinking to yourself, how in the heck can we get something out of Palm Sunday that makes sense for us today? And God just gave me something that, we're going to be maybe 15 minutes or 20 minutes today. It's a very simple thing, but something I believe will encourage you. And so if you hang with us today, I really believe God's going to just totally just encourage you and just open your mind up to just an understanding of what he's presenting to us on this day. As we count down from now until Thursday, when he would have been arrested, and Friday, known as Good Friday, when he would have been killed, when Jesus would have been killed and murdered and nailed to that cross. And then Sunday, which is the epicenter of our faith, it is the resurrection. As we count down to that, we look at the events happening leading up to that moment. And it's amazing because as Jesus got closer to going home to heaven, to dying, to his death, and then what happened after. But as Jesus approached this moment, he's actually told his disciples, I believe, 3 times, as we pick this up in Matthew 21 in a moment, 3 times of his impending death, that he would die. He knew it was coming. If you look at Zechariah chapter 9, which we're not going to go to right now, but I think it's verse 9 and 10, it actually foretells, it prophesies what we're getting ready to talk about in Matthew 21. It's found in John 12, I think Mark 11, which is the story of Jesus's final entry into Jerusalem. And this is foretold, it's prophesied in Zechariah chapter 9, verses 9 and 10. And then we see it obviously fulfilled in who Jesus is. So there were some people, I want you to kind of, for a moment, I want you to picture one of those images that has like the little blue people, where there's 1,000 people and then one's red in the middle or whatever it is. But I want you to just take a sea of people and just begin to, for a moment, kind of divide them into sections. Because as Jesus made his triumphal entry into Jerusalem, or his final entry into Jerusalem, we're going to see that there's different groups of people that are responding in different ways to his arrival. And the significance of how he arrived and the significance of him going to that holy city of Mount Zion, being Jerusalem, and the significance of that leading up to his death is amazing on its own. But what we also see is the way that people are reacting to his entry, to him coming into Jerusalem. There's a bunch of different reactions. Some of them we're going to kind of assume based on some text, and some of them are pretty plain to us. And so let's look at this for a moment in Matthew chapter 21, verses 6. The disciples went and did just as Jesus had instructed them, and brought the donkey and the colt and laid their coats on them. And he sat on the coats. Most of the crowd spread their coats in the road, and others were cutting branches from the trees and spreading them in the road. The crowds going ahead of him and those who followed were shouting, "Hosanna to the Son of David! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord! Hosanna in the highest!" When he had entered Jerusalem, all the city was stirred, saying, "Who is this?" And the crowds were saying, "This is the prophet Jesus from Nazareth in Galilee." I want to break this down for you, but we can see that it's told a couple different ways, but the gist of it is there is a donkey. Actually, it wasn't a donkey. It would have been, let me get this right, it would have been the result of, it would be a hinny is what they call it. It would be like a mule, but it would have been the result of a female donkey and a male horse mating. So a male horse and a female donkey would have been the result of what Jesus rode in. Interesting enough, and my dad's preached an amazing message on this before, but interesting enough that this would have been the weaker of the two combinations. The one that wasn't really strong, didn't have endurance. It was the offspring of a female horse and a male donkey called a jack. That would have been the strong mule that they would have used during this day. This was an animal that was tied up that was essentially a mistake. It wouldn't have been desirable for what they needed these animals for at the time. And so, of course, my dad preached an amazing message that Jesus rode on the back of a mistake as he made his way into Jerusalem, which is a great, great idea this morning. It's not where I'm going, but it's a great idea this morning that no matter what mistake you feel like you are, or you've made, haven't made, whatever it may be, that Jesus can still use you in such a profound way. But that's not where I'm going this morning. I want you to see some of the key things here is that as Jesus went through the streets, most of the crowd spread their coats in the road. Others were cutting branches from the tree and spreading them in the road. Different people were doing different things, and it said most of them were doing this, but we see not all of them were. We also know, if we go to John chapter 12, verse 19, it says, "So the Pharisees said to one another, 'You see, you are not doing any good. Look, the world has gone after him.'" So we also see that we've got another group of people, the Pharisees, who are ticked off that Jesus is getting all this attention as he's riding into Jerusalem. These people that are throwing their coats in the road, these people that are making such a big deal over the fulfillment of the prophecy from Zechariah 9. Now you think as scholars, you think as the religious elite, you think as leaders of their community, that they would have seen Zechariah 9 and remembered it and would, of course, celebrated what Jesus was doing and celebrate this. But obviously they're not. They're upset with him. And so I want you to picture this. I want you to picture a city with me. I'm going somewhere, I promise you. I want you to picture a city. Jesus, who is prophesied will come back as king. It's talked about over and over and over again, just like King David, just like his lineage, just like those that were archetypes of Christ. He would come as king. And so here the day comes where prophecy is being fulfilled, and the King of Kings, not just the king, but the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, the elite, the great Jesus, King, Messiah, the one prophesied about, is now going to fulfill prophecy in Zechariah 9 and enter into the city. The kings of that day would have almost every time they entered the city, whether they were going out to war and leaving or coming back, whether they would almost always be riding on the back of a horse. That symbolizes that there is a battle that's been fought and a war that's been won. Or if they were leaving the city on a horse, that would symbolize that they were on their way to do something that they wanted to show how powerful they were. Jesus entered as king, but he wasn't riding on a king's animal. He wasn't actually riding a horse. He didn't make his entry in as a horse. The donkey, or this particular animal that Jesus would have rode on, it actually symbolizes peace. And I love this about Jesus, and I'm going to get to the categories of people in a moment, but I love this about Jesus because although he came as king, the King of Kings, and he is victorious, and he was getting ready to once and for all to show the enemy that he has no power and dominion. All authority is in him from his Father in heaven. All of that, he decided to ride on the back of an animal that symbolized peace. He entered a city where, as I described this, he entered a city where there were clashes of issues about prayer with the Pharisees, holiness, life after death, paying taxes to the Romans, and on and on and on. In addition to clashing with the Pharisees and religious leaders about the authority that Jesus had from God. There were all these people that were challenging him and who he was and whether or not he mattered and whether or not his authority was real and whether or not he was truly the king. He could have easily overcompensated by riding the back of a horse. And I feel this way sometimes, but before I kind of move on to the main point here, I feel like in Christianity, we overcompensate a lot. I feel like as believers, we overcompensate in a lot of different ways, where we feel like we have to project something that so smells of religion in order to get our point across. But I actually believe that Jesus is asking us to go into the middle of chaos, into the middle of the stirring of a city, into the middle of a place where we have issues and problems and things that we don't agree on. And it might be Facebook for you. It might be the dinner table with family. It might be a text chat group or whatever it is. But how many places are we entering into where we've got issues with the people in the houses that we're getting ready to walk past? The people that are getting ready to come out. the religious leaders standing on the side of the road. But Jesus didn't overcompensate and exert his authority by what he rode in on. He was confident. He's a confident king. He's a king who is confident in his authority and his kingly dominion. And that same confidence that he had when he rode the back of that donkey into Jerusalem is the same confidence he has today in the middle of this pandemic and COVID-19 coronavirus. He is a confident king who is marching in our city, who is riding the back of peace, who's saying this is an opportunity not for chaos, not for worry, not for panic, not for greed, not for all of these things that we're seeing sprout up here and there, but it is a time that the King of Kings can remind us that he is both fully authoritative, has the full dominion of heaven, and yet brings peace wherever he goes. What a picture for us right now. What a picture. And so I want to talk to you just very briefly about some of the people that we would have encountered. First, it is the Pharisees that we find in John chapter 12, who say that Jesus was up to no good, that there's no point in this. Like, why does he have to do this? What is the deal? There's the people that don't recognize him as king at all, that don't recognize that he should even be doing it. And I hope none of us that are watching this today are in that situation, but if you are, it's all right. You're good. You're in good hands here. Hopefully we'll convince you of how good God is. Then there's the people, the second group of people are people who may be laying down the coats and branches, but don't even really know why they're doing it. Think about that for a moment. You hear the stir. It says at the end of that scripture in Matthew, and you don't have to put it up, but it says that all the city was stirred, and people were saying, who is this? So imagine the crowd, imagine the commotion, imagine in our streets, if all of a sudden you heard people coming out of their doors screaming and shouting, Hosanna, 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 and proclaiming him as king, and they're taking off their robes and their coats, and they're cutting trees down, and they're putting them in the road, it would be quite a commotion in our neighborhoods. It'd be quite a scene. It'd be pretty easy to come out of your house and kind of be like, okay, we're cutting down branches and we're throwing our robes down. Nellie, get your robe and get those prunes, those prune shears. Let's get these palm fronds cut down. Let's kind of join with what's going on here because it looks like something's happening, something's stirring. And I thought about this, how many times in our faith or in culture do we do things because everyone else is doing them, but we don't understand the presence of the one who is coming. We don't actually understand that the king is coming, that the king is here, that the king who rides on the back of peace is actually in our midst. You know, I grew up in the whole real Pentecostal kind of charismatic. We didn't know what the heck we were. But I grew up in it, and there were so many moments where people were touched by God. And we've interacted with streams and groups of people and different charismatic streams. And there's so many times where God has done incredible things, but I've also seen how people just respond to things because everyone else is responding that way. I've also seen in many religions and many denominations in Christianity how people just do it because they're supposed to. But do you realize that you're actually in the presence of a king? You know, are we waking up and doing our devotional or sharing that, you know, that meme of faith or hope or whatever it is because it makes us look like, you know, we're starting our day as good little Christian boys and girls? Or do we understand that we actually are in the awestruck presence of a king who's riding on the back of peace? The third group of people is the ones that didn't recognize him as king. They recognized him as just a prophet. Not the Son of God, not the Messiah. I've read this over and over and over again. I don't think I've ever caught it. In verse 11, if you want to put that up from verse 11, it says, and the crowds were saying, as people asked, as the city was stirring, as the chaos was happening, and everyone was saying, who is this? Some of the crowds were saying back, this is the prophet. Verse 11. This is the prophet, Jesus from Nazareth in Galilee. Is he just a prophet? Is it just good advice to live by? Is it just a good, set of rules? or moral code or compass? Are his words today just here to comfort you and to put a Band-Aid on whatever you're feeling on the inside? Or do we fully and completely understand that we are in the presence of the King? That we are in the presence of the Messiah, the one that was prophesied by Isaiah and Jeremiah, the one that was prophesied in Zechariah? Do we really understand that the King has made his entry into Zion, into our hearts, into our city, into our homes? Man, I tell you, I can't imagine what some of you are facing out there. We have healthcare workers. We have people that I've known that have been sick, family members of people in our church who have passed away. We have reports of all sorts of stuff happening. I can't imagine what you're facing. Can't imagine the chaos of your home in this moment. The frustration, the worry, maybe even the boredom. But I want to tell you that the King is riding on the back of peace. The fourth group of people is this. It's the ones who see a victorious and yet peaceful King. Even on the chaotic streets of Jerusalem, on his roadway to death, he was not at war. He came in peace. And he came as a confident king and not an insecure ruler. He came knowing he didn't have to ride the back of a horse to show he was powerful. He came not ready for a fight, even though he knew he'd be beaten and crucified. He knew that he was getting ready to face the worst. He knew, as he predicted and told his disciples, that death is imminent upon me. He still chose peace. What a lesson for you and I today. That we not only see him as victorious, we not only see him as a peaceful and confident king, but he is not an insecure ruler. And not one of us here, whether you're a believer or not, and hopefully today you'll begin to believe, not one of us needs to be insecure, because he has created each and every one of us to have the full inheritance, to be kings and priests, the full inheritance of a son or daughter, and to rule here on the earth. Not insecure, not worried, not full of panic, but the King of Kings, the Prince of Peace, the victorious one, the confident King, is in our midst and inside of us. And because of it, when we walk the streets of our city, we can be confident that we are bringing peace wherever we go. Oh, it might feel like a war, especially if you get that last thing of toilet paper. It might feel like chaos. It might feel like confusion. It might feel like great conflict is in the air with the politics and the blame game and all of that. But our King is victorious, and our King is riding on the back of peace. And because of that, you and I are victorious, and we are riding on the back of peace wherever we go. This Palm Sunday, I want you to know that. Be confident. We don't serve an insecure ruler. We serve a confident King. I want you to do this for me. There's two things before you go. We have a link at the top of our Facebook page, at the very top of the Facebook page, that's pinned to the top. That is a form. It's a contact form. And it is 100%, we will not drive you crazy, we promise you. It is for updates about COVID-19. And so as we get resources, as we get information about our community, ways that you can be helped, and ways those of you that are able to can actually help. So if you need help or would like to help, we're going to be sending resources and opportunities out. If you want to be a part of that kind of COVID-19 coronavirus harvest resource team, whether you need help or you want to help, we're going to kind of connect via email, maybe text message. But that link is at the top of the Facebook page here. It is pinned there. And so before I close today, I would like you to do two things for me. Number one, if you will share this before we end, we would appreciate it. Share it to all the groups you're part of. Share it to your friends and family. Tag someone that needs this Palm Sunday message, that needs to know that the victorious and peaceful King is in our city. And then the second thing is as I end this, if you haven't given already, we thank you for considering that at least and doing that with the links provided. And also, if you'd like to text to give, you can do that. But the most important thing today, if you will do this for me as we end, we're going to end right now. We'll put up the giving information. And then as soon as you've got that taken care of, if you will go and sign up with that pinned post at the top of our Facebook page, then that'll allow us to contact you and keep you updated for what's happening here at Harvest. We thank you. We bless you. Remember, our King is alive. He is victorious. He is riding on the back of peace. And he has come to remind each and every one of us that he truly is King, and that what he carries, we carry on the inside of us. So let confusion, worry, and panic go, and let fear go, and let his love and peace be your portion in this coming week. We'll be back live every day. We're going to be jumping around a little bit for our daily lives, and back live here for service Wednesday night at 7 p.m. God bless you. We hope to hear from you soon.